Greetings, groovy people! Welcome to the channel. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon, back with another quick vid. Since I've been working on a ton of October projects, I wanted to share one of them, just the inking of part of the Whimper in the Dark, which is another free webcomic I occasionally work on, starring our two dogs, Jack and Julius, Jack being the mixed breed, and Julius being the Boston Terrier. I am submitting to the Comic Fury Zine, which is Halloween themed this time. It is safe for work. I'll be doing a tour of it once we get it all completed. And it is scheduled to release on October 31st, come hell or high water. But this is my little contribution. I submitted a Dark Horse entry for the Not Safe for Work zine, and I really wanted an excuse in October to work on this story, because it is kind of a creepy, horror-esque, horror-themed, somewhat thing that's kind of cute with our dogs, and it's really a project that I started a couple years ago so that I can work on my inking skills. So that's what's going on in the background. Comic Fury Zine is a free community zine that I've done several videos on. It started in 2020 as kind of a project to help bring awareness to some of the fantastic artists in our Comic Fury community. So I will have every video I have links to our back issues. The Whimper in the Dark was something that my partner and I kind of came up with the idea for one thing. Like, usually when I work on comics, it tends to be more in a very obviously manga and anime influenced style. Obviously, it's not up to the standards of most manga or even like Western comics. You know, I'm happy with the progress that I've been making. I feel like I've been improving on a lot of different aspects within the comic. But The Whimper in the Dark, there are a couple different reasons why I started working on this. One was because my partner and I would joke around about our dog Jack. He's highly intelligent. It almost as though it's not just projection, you know. It's almost as though he understands quite a bit of what we're saying. And we were trying to imagine some of the things that he did while we were not at home. And we kind of came up with these silly stories about how they're fighting extra-dimensional, alien, Lovecraftian creatures, you know, at psychic wars with greater beings. And here we humans are sitting around thinking we're better than them. And poor little Jack Dog is here just defending everyone who's clueless from unimaginable horrors. So this was just kind of like a little running joke thing that we would tell stories to each other because we're weirdos and we do things like that. Because I left my job before we moved to Oregon, was trying to focus full-time on art, and I recognized that there are many aspects of my art within Dark Horse where I was lacking skill. And a good part of that was pen control and varying my inking techniques, action, and movement. So the second idea, besides just having like a fun little story with our dogs, I wanted to kind of give myself another comic where I could experiment and exercise and work on my inking skills. So that was kind of one idea behind this. The other thing is that, like, as much as manga and anime has been a massive influence on me, not just manga and anime though, like I read, you know, I like music from Japan. I read some authors from Japan. Murakami is one of my favorites. Both Ryu Murakami and Haruki, which is, I would say I obviously like Haruki better, but Ryu Murakami I picked up by accident. Well, not by accident. I saw him next to Kafka on the Shore, and I was like, this book is called 69. So I was like, oh, I gotta at least read the first page. And when I opened up the book, the first chapter is It's a Beautiful Day. And I read that title and I was like, oh shit, that's one of my mom's favorite bands. It's one of the bands that I really like.
There's a girl in my room and her face on the wall with no eyes.
And so I looked to the next chapter and it was like a Bob Dylan, Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands or some shit like that. And I was like, holy shit, this book is immediately referencing 60s music. It's titled 69. Okay, I read the synopsis, I read the first paragraph. I liked the idea of it, so I bought the book. At any rate, a lot of my writings are inspired by literature as well as anime manga, so it's stuff outside of just like the comic and visual genre. So Dark Horse has a lot of that kind of influence in it. Starting this other project was it was a way to draw more so from my Western influences. Of course, Western influences are in Dark Horse, but with this comic specifically and focusing on ink, as I mentioned in previous videos when I discussed the Whimper in the Dark, my parents, not my dad wasn't home very much, but Mom and my grandma, I spent a ton of time with my grandma, and they both loved the PBS show Mystery. Anything with like Agatha Christie, Mrs. Marple, Inspector Poirot. There were a lot of other different stories that they would tell too. There would be like re-showings of like the Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes, shit like that. But the opening sequence for Mystery was all illustrated by Edward Gorey, who is an American artist who's very macabre, very interesting character. And the more I started looking into like him biographically, I just found I've always had like an appreciation for his art, but I really wanted to draw influence from how skilled his inking was, because that opening was so important. I mean, it's interesting because it's like things that flash in your mind when you're thinking about stuff back from when you were a kid. That was one of those things that I always remembered very vibrantly. And of course, also Charles Addams. I liked the Addams Family movies when I was a kid. Looking more as an adult, I started looking into his comic strips, his art, and I really love how well his washes were. Some other artists that were suggested to me by colleagues in the field and other independent artists, one of which used to read my comic, and he's a writer for comics. I read his, I've mentioned, I think, Flowers in the Deep before. I hope that he eventually comes back and hire someone to finish the art for that and finish the story, because it was really good. It was very good. But he had suggested to me that I check out David Small's Stitches to help, again, with like movement and washes. So The Whimper in the Dark, this is kind of another avenue of exploration for me, exploring things that grab my interest, that just different influences, right? Another thing that I remember very vividly when I was younger, my parents, then this is something that both my mom and dad did. When we were kids, we had this giant mustard yellow kind of velveteen chair that my sister and I could actually sit on our parents' laps, and they would read to us. They would read The Hobbit. They would read poetry from this selected poem book that is still one of my favorites. I remember Mom would also read, Mom more so than Dad, she would read poems from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. So lots of different poetry that was read to us. And in addition to all that, a lot of times they would have like storybooks that they would read to us. Now, we did get read children's stuff, not just adult stuff. Like, I mean, I would not consider a lot of the poems in that selected works book to be for children. Especially, like some of the drier stuff, like Dad would read Hamlet's soliloquy being read to us when we were children. I had no idea what the fuck a bodkin was. I didn't know what half the shit in these poems were, which is probably why Longfellow resonated with me more. But I remember when I was a kid, we had an illustrated copy of the Coolidge poem, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. And within this book were just these gorgeously detailed woodcut art, these prints. Nowadays, I would say that Goya is fairly, some of his woodcuts, or I will be drawing influence from that for The Whimper in the Dark. In addition to looking for like some new artists, somebody had suggested to me on Comic Fury Jim Woodridge. That was in a different thread. It was like for like weird, bizarre stuff that you like. So I'm going to be checking out his work pretty soon here. But these woodcuts, getting back to Coolidge, and influences from when you were younger, just seeing all that detail and just the impression that this artwork left upon me. And so I think that it was like having all these books around, having all these illustrated works, which, it always kind of peeved me that people would consider books that have illustrations to be kids' books, because really, no, I feel like I've always felt like this, even as a younger person, even as young as probably grade school. I always felt like that was a raw deal, that was a bunch of bullshit, because illustrations really help to enhance the literature, the reading. It's not that you need pictures as an instruction of what's going on. The pictures are there to complement the art of the written word. The two go hand in hand quite often. These are just kind of the things that I feel really helped foster an interest in wanting to draw, and just having fun creating my own things, first by mimicking and then by drawing influence and creating my own thing. So I'm looking at Gory, I'm looking at Adams, I'm not quite looking at Door so much as I should. I don't fucking know. I'll put his name up. Here's the artist. I should have researched this, but this is just a fast video. But that's kind of like the idea. It's kind of nice to explore different influences. Dark Horse is such a big story. It's so fucking big that it's kind of nice to have a side project that I can just abandon whenever I want, work on whenever I want, and then leave and then come back to, because we have a whole bunch of little stories with the Whimper in the Dark scheduled, just little scenarios. Nothing like, they're very short arcs, in my opinion. I like it that way because it gives me kind of another avenue of exploration that's not tied into a longer story. It's just kind of little serials of things, which makes sense because that's kind of where I'm drawing a lot of my influence from. Aside from something like Stitches, which was a very, very interesting read. I really feel like I need to go back and I checked out a copy from the library in St. Louis when we lived there, but I need to go back and actually probably get a copy of that, because I think that there's even more I can learn. And to be honest, I would eventually like to have a copy of some of the Addams Family volumes, the different books that he had put out, so that I can more closely study his washes and the way he draws stuff. So that's just kind of what I wanted to talk about this week. Anyway, this is all for the Comic Fury Zine Campfire Stories edition, Safe for Work. So I thought it would be appropriate to show a little sneak peek on what I'm working for my submission. This specific story that I'm doing was loosely influenced by the Color from Space, or the Color from Outer Space, Lovecraft. Y'all know. I mean, this is pretty basic shit. But it was my tie, because I remember I just re-listened to it on Horror Babble because I didn't feel like reading it and I don't have a copy of it. But we've been kind of listening to audio readings to kind of simmer down for the evening and to kind of get into the Halloween spirit. But the Color Out of Space, it was interesting how he, in the story, talking about how these colors and shit are changing the flora and fauna of the area. So the idea behind this little story here is that there's a fox demon thing that has many different colors, that's got several tails and stuff, so kind of blending the East meets West influence in this little comic. But yeah, that's just kind of what's going on in the background. Wow. This was supposed to be a quick vid. Yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. I hope you've been enjoying the videos. I've been trying to keep it short and sweet, but we'll see what happens. Peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.